I'm a firm believer that the creative process is different within everyone, and then you can do whatever you want with your photography. However, especially in the beginning of your photography journey, I think that it's really important to build upon a foundation of knowledge and practice. So today I want to talk about a few things that you might want to avoid, especially if you're trying to intentionally improve your photography. If you're going to be enjoying this video, please hit the like button. It really helps with the YouTube algorithm, apparently. Feel free to hit subscribe as well. Thank you, and let's get on with the video. Okay, the first topic of discussion is to make sure to use your viewfinder. These days, cameras have amazing LCD screens, and sometimes you even have cameras only with LCD screens. However, my point being, when you're starting off with photography and you want to get a little bit better, I highly recommend using the viewfinder. That's because with a viewfinder, you're able to compose an image a little bit cleaner. And in general, the viewfinder offers usually better clearance of the world, which means you get to see the world a little bit bigger than what you might see on the LCD screen. It also helps you to hold the camera straight and tuck your arms in. You get a little bit better stabilization. You get to see the world a little bit straighter. So it's highly recommended, especially when you start. The next mistake that beginner photographers make a lot of the time is using a zoom lens. Again, there are a lot of great photographers that use zoom lenses. However, if you're starting off, I recommend using a prime. There are a few reasons to this. One is that it helps you become accustomed to a certain focal length. You know, a certain focal length represents a certain type of way of seeing, and that comes with like compression and how you interact with the world. You know, if you're using a wider lens like a 28, for example, then you have to get up close. You need to really think of how to frame your shot. If you're using a longer length, then you have to get used to that compression. You need to find out that distance between you and the subject a little bit more. However, from the beginning of your photography journey, if you start using a zoom lens, then you don't get accustomed to these different focal lengths and what they do. You end up getting this bad habit of just like zooming in and out and seeing what happens. Also, you forget that the best way of zooming in and out sometimes can be with your own feet, which leads to a whole new set of problems, by the way. The next issue I want to discuss is being accustomed to over-editing your images. There are so many problems and so many bad habits that you can pick up by doing this. First one is that you start relying on editing to help your images, and obviously that means you're not taking good photographs. The next issue is that when you're starting off with photography, you don't know what looks good or bad, to be honest, unless you're like some amazing artist in nature. So the problem with that is that you're fidgeting with an image, not knowing what looks good to the human eye. And you're messing around with the parameters and seeing what's going to happen. So most of the time you just end up messing up an image as opposed to making an image look better and fixing it up. And that's why, at least in my opinion, it's actually pretty important to shoot JPEG and RAW when you're starting off, because sometimes you could just use a JPEG and it might look better. And then you can keep the RAW file for later once you maybe get better at editing. That's probably why so many people like the Fujifilm cameras these days, because they have the film recipes. Another camera that I do recommend is the Ricoh GR, because they have a good positive film preset, which actually looks pretty nice as well. So, all in all, stop over editing, especially when you're starting off. Lay off the drugs for now, and then later on go back and use those enhancement drugs like steroids as much as you want. The next piece of advice, which I say right next to a horse's butt, is to not over-rely on auto features. The thing here is that I think it's totally fine using automatic features. I use them myself, but again, going back, it's important to not over-rely on them when you're starting with your photography journey. I personally think it's pretty important to get accustomed to what the camera itself is doing. So for example, there's a physical difference between a photograph that's taken at 1/1000th of a second versus something that's taken at something like 1/60th of a second or 1/30th of a second, and slower. If you're over relying on automatic features and you're not being intentional with the settings that you're using when you're taking the photograph, then you'll not be able to control your photographs the more and more you progress within your photography journey. The next topic of discussion, tripods. They can be helpful. They can, and depending on your type of photography, whether it being, landscapes or portraits in the studio, they can really come in handy. But to be honest, for 90% of the population, where you bought your first camera and you're looking into what tripod to get, you don't need to get that tripod, and you don't need to bring a tripod as well when you're taking photos. Most cameras these days have great ISO performance, they have great stabilization, they have lower apertures on lenses. There's so many great options, and I don't really think most people need a tripod. I think getting accustomed to taking photos without a tripod is great too, because you don't rely on the tripod for stabilization. You practice the stability of your hands, and at least in my opinion, the photography experience is something so much better when you're lightweight and you don't have a million kilos on your back. So yeah, tripod, forget it for now. Get it when you really need it, like when you're taking photos of stars or something, then yeah, get a tripod, I guess. And the next tip will be quite similar to the one about tripods, and it is to forget about all the additional equipment that you think you might need. Honestly, to enjoy photography, all you need is a camera and a lens, ultimately. And there's just so much additional equipment in this world, like filters. You have a million different types of filters. If you're into videography, you have mics. Again, you have tripods. Then maybe you want your second lens. Maybe you need a different camera for a different kind of situation. And that's all great. But again, when you're starting off, ultimately, you just need a camera and a lens, and you just need to shoot as much as you can, and that's kind of it. I personally know great photographers that have stuck to that equation, that basically that first camera that they got, first lens that they got, and they just stuck to it for years and years and years, and that's all they know, that's all they care about, and that's what has brought success upon them. So especially in the beginning, try to keep things simple, try to keep things light, use money on other things like travel and coffee instead of buying a bunch of equipment that you might not even need in the beginning. Just wanted to reiterate that again, this is just my style. I like to keep things light. That's what gives me the most joy. I know for certain types of landscape photography, you really need certain filters and you need a tripod and all that stuff. But I don't know, try it. It's quite liberating if you have just a camera and just a lens. The next mistake you want to avoid as a beginner is not being ready to take the photo, specifically relying too much on neck straps. Although I do have a neck strap, in this case, I usually make sure to wrap it around my wrist like that so I can take a photo whenever I want, and I'm always ready. I recommend to either get a wrist strap or get a neck strap that is pretty flexible like this leather one, so that you can wrap it around your wrist. And when you're really on the street taking photos, then wrap it around your wrist like this. There's also the option of using short neck straps so that the distance between your arm or picking up your camera and your eye is much closer. That is also recommended. Okay, so everyone, thank you for watching the video till the end. One announcement to make: I'm finally starting a newsletter. I'm pretty excited, and I'm looking for starter subscribers, and it'll be great because it'll be sad if I start it and just no one reads my stuff. So yeah, so check the description box down below and subscribe if you want. Sorry, I just wanted to jump in. I feel like I really didn't sell that very well. So in the newsletter, I'll be talking about freelancing, art in general, and also doing this kind of advice, I guess, stuff for photography. It's going to be free. You can also subscribe for a paid subscription. I think. I'm not too used to this thing yet, but yeah, we'll see. So that's an information I'll be providing. Yeah, so sign up below in the description box, and see you guys in the next one. Bye.